Hello, this is Michael Yan from Chiang Mai, Thailand. Good evening. And let's get started soon. Please send this out. We'll wait till a couple hundred people get on. It is 0036 hours here, so it means it's 12:36 in the afternoon in Washington, D.C., the ugly Washington. And so, we'll get started here really quick. Please share this out. I'd like to start off by saying thank you to everybody who supports my work. Vital, very important, super important. Thank you very much. Seen a couple of people join Patreon today, for which I greatly appreciate and need it. And thank you for the PayPal subscriptions. Those are massively important. Venmo also. And my Japanese and American bank accounts. You can see it if you look on my Facebook or go to my Patreon page. But yeah, hugely appreciate it. And let's get started. I just finished watching the 26th episode of Pandemic by Steve Bannon. 26th episode. So I've watched every minute of all of them because, I'm spending my days and nights studying this virus. It's the most important thing going on in the world right now. Last year, I got my vaccines to return to India and got my arms filled with shots. And then the insurgency broke out in Hong Kong, and I jumped on an airplane because that is really, I've been focusing on China for years. And in fact, my third book on Chinese information war is about to come out, or it's on Amazon right now, Amazon JP, not Amazon in the U.S., but Amazon in Japan. It's in Japanese language, but you can order it now. But anyway, I've written 3 books on Chinese information war, and I've been focused on it. But then last year I got my shots to head over to India for some research. The insurgency broke out in Hong Kong, and I jumped right on it. And so I spent 6 months there on the ground, and then of course on February 5th. The Hong Kong government, basically did not allow me back into the country or into Hong Kong, whatever you want to call Hong Kong, and deported me, or as they said, denied entry. And so, but then this virus hit. And then if you recall, I was one of the very earliest on this virus. Like as soon as there was enough information to go, is this just another thing? Because we get this little white noise all the time of outbreak here, outbreak there, and just put it in the back of the mind, file it, and and then kind of pay attention. And this one kept kind of tweaking up a little bit, and finally I said, "Oh, I think this might be serious." The same as the insurgency in Hong Kong. That's why I jumped on the airplane to Hong Kong in June, right at the beginning, and immediately was the first and the only one calling it an insurgency for quite a few months, actually. And but now it's widely recognized that the insurgency in Hong Kong is actually an insurgency. And so, but likewise with this virus, it is massively important, and it is way out of control now. I just watched the third or 26th episode of Pandemic with Steve Bannon, and my friend Maura Moynihan was on, and also my friend Brian Kolfaja was on. So 3 people I know were on, Steve and Maura, and Maura's an expert on Tibet and highly knowledgeable about Thailand as well, and about Nepal, and about India. Her father was ambassador to India, and so she grew up in India. She's American. Her dad was Senator Moynihan, actually. And actually, I just sent her an email about this Chinese information war. And I sent it to her and Steve and Brian Kolfaja, who are all just on the Pandemic show. And my email to those 3 esteemed individuals was about the Chinese information war. A lot of people seem to think that the Chinese information war is something new and something that's just, hatched since the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, started rising in stature with their rising wealth. But that is completely untrue. In fact, they've been very good at playing Americans and Koreans for many years. And so here's an example from a book in 1938 that I found somewhere a few years ago. And I published this in 2017, so 3 or 4 years ago. So it's a book from 1938, and it's written by a man named, the name of the book is called Behind the News in China. Behind the News in China. And the author is Frederick Vincent Williams. This is 1938. So let that sink in for a moment. Listen to this paragraph. Many who read this work at the start will declare it is pro-Japanese. But how many who have read books and articles in favor of China and against Japan have said, this is pro-Chinese? We are prone to accept anything we read or hear in favor of the Chinese as fact and to doubt as propaganda anything we hear that is in favor of Japan. As a matter of fact, this country has been deluged with Chinese propaganda, and we have seen little or nothing in defense of Japan. That's 1938. And so, which is something I've been saying since 2014 or so. But the Chinese information war has been obvious to a lot of us for many years, but I didn't realize until 4 or 5 years ago that actually in 1938 that Frederick Vincent Williams had actually published this, basically the same thing. 1938, he's basically saying the same thing. Basically, and if you, not just with his words in his book called, Behind the News in China, there's a lot of others. In context, this all fits with, the Chinese were running a massive information campaign in the United States, and they were very good at turning us against Japanese and making us, they're very good at there's certain cultures that some aspects of the Chinese culture can kind of virally latch onto, like one of those fungi that gets in the ant and gets in the ant's brain and makes it go up to the top of the little grass thing and hangs out there until a cow eats it or whatever, and then it gets in the cow. You know what I mean? It's one of those kind of things. The Chinese virus knows how to get inside of certain minds, certain cultures, and one of those is some of the American cultures it can virally attach to, and I've studied it, and I think I know how it does it. And it can also do it with Koreans, and that's how it's learned to adapt to Koreans and weaponize Koreans against Japanese. In very incredible and insidious ways. But one of the ways that the Chinese virus is able to do that with the American, some of our cultures, we have a lot of cultures, of course, is that they will be rice bowl Christians. If you heard about rice bowl Christians, I'm not saying that all Chinese are rice bowl Christians. That's completely untrue. Because a lot of them are absolutely authentic in a big way. But there's also those who weaponize, just as we have a lot of Americans who do it, and they just use it as a pulpit. And it's very easy to weaponize it against Japanese because fewer than 1% of Japanese have ever become Christians. And so in the highly Christian country of the United States, it's very easy to get Americans to side with Chinese, have an easy time getting Americans to side against Japanese because they'll play it up like, here's the Japanese atheists. And you can hear a lot of the, some of the old American missionaries in Japan were just like, this Japanese language is like designed by Satan to, to thwart the word of God, that sort of thing. And the Chinese were very good at going, yeah, see, look at that. And then Americans like, oh yeah, the Chinese, they're Christians. And you know what I mean? And I could go on for hours about that, but that's part of the way that they get inside of our brains, like that little fungus in the ant, and get us to do their bidding. They're quite good at it. And they do the similar with Koreans, actually. It's a little bit different, but basically it still works. Anyway, bottom line is Chinese information war inside the United States is absolutely nothing new. And if there's one thing that the Japanese are incredibly bad at, they're really great at a lot of things, but one of the things they're really bad at is information war. One of the things about Japanese culture is, which is actually similar to my Southern culture, is in the Japanese culture is like, if I'm doing a really great job, then it's self-evident, it's like, it's spiritual. It's like God knows, you know what I mean? And so they don't brag about it. It's like, I'm doing a good job and it's enough for me to know in myself and for God to know, right? Japanese are like that. So they're not that trait and some other aspects makes Japanese not very good at information war. They're not good at spinning a huge lie and a lot of huge propaganda. They're just not good at that like some other cultures are like masters at it, including the Chinese who are running the Chinese Communist Party. They're absolutely masterful at it. Spinning the big lie like the Nazis did and that sort of thing, and learning how to use their viruses to, because some cultures are more, this is something I've thought about for years in the many countries and cultures I've been in and with, is that some viruses, some codes, let's say, from some cultures are able to hijack other cultures better than others. And it's almost like everybody has a Norton, antivirus thing for certain viruses. Like for instance, most people from the South in the United States are not going to, if they're really from Southern culture, they're not very vulnerable to, for instance, joining a suicide cult that's like Islamic suicide cult. They just won't do it, right? Because we've got like Norton antivirus in our head for that. But then there's other avenues of entry that clever. I'll publish this later on. I've written so much about it that I've never published, but it's a fascinating topic. How some cultures can hijack others, and then others we have a resilience against. I want to circle back to the virus, but at the moment, we see the presidential elections coming up in the United States, and I see Mr. Biden. He's actually, it's very sad and clear that he's lost it. And you can see it's kind of creeping for years. It's interesting how some people like in their 90s are super sharp. Might be 95, might be 100 or super sharp. Like a lot of people I communicate with are in their 80s or 90s. And you would never know that that's how old they were by the things that they write, because they're very sharp. They sound like super smart people in their 40s or 50s, but they're much, much older because their brains are super sharp. Their bodies are old. But then there's other people, as we've all know, that their mind gets, and it might be you or me, our minds get old quicker, and that seems to be happening with Biden. For instance, he said that since 2007, 150 million Americans have been killed by guns. Just things like that. He said the other day, he said he was running for the Senate, and just it keeps going on and on and on. I don't know what's going on with that. In any case, very interesting. So, wow. Now let's circle back to the virus, and I'm going to answer. Hey, Dean, and I'm going to answer some questions later. But first, hey, Kathleen in Utah, West Point, Utah. But first, let's go on to a couple of other things. One is we are actually in a state of war at this point with the virus. And some people are pinging me offline and saying, what do you mean by China is dead now? The China that we know it is dead. It's been dead since December, so it just hasn't gotten the notice yet. There's so many things that are going on with their economy. It's just nowhere near getting started yet. Are they even going to be able to plant their spring crops? Are they going to be able to do that? This is pretty serious if they can't. And we're looking at a potential global recession here, which means in addition to the fact that their economy is essentially shut down at this point, and the supply chain is largely shut down. And so that's two things. And the virus is still smashing them. And the tariff fight wars and all these other things. And so many things. And now, even if their economy just jump-started again instantly, this virus is still really just getting purchased in other places like Italy, Iran, South Korea, and Singapore, here in Thailand. Clearly, the numbers are covered up. And likewise in the United States. And so even if the economy and the supply chain were magically back online instantly, it's clear that the global economy is in potential serious trouble here, which would mean even if their factories and everything are running in China, if nobody's there to buy stuff, then that stuff won't move off the shelves. And so there's a perfect storm of problems for China at this point. And so President Trump, he just got back from India. I'm very happy he went to India. Americans, you need to beware. I spent 10 months in India, which is like 1,000 years in any other country. We need to have a strong and fruitful relationship with India, but our people need to be just as much on guard on doing business in India as they ever were in China. It is a hardcore, bare knuckles business environment, I assure you. Everything is, you got to check everything at all times. Anyway, we are in a wartime situation at this point with this virus. We're on the front end of it. And now more and more people are finally waking up to it. President Trump just got back from India, and he's about to have a speech at 1800 Washington time, right? So that should be about 5 hours and 10 minutes from now. I'm either going to stay awake to watch that, or I'm going to get a couple hours of sleep and set my alarm and get up. Usually I'm up by then by a couple hours anyway. So I'm going to watch that very closely. And how President Trump, he's already lost the march on this. I mean, the China has really screwed this up massively. They have basically screwed the planet, the human part of the planet. They may have helped Mother Earth if they knock down their own. Knocking down their own, production of emissions and pollutions and whatnot, but they very much hurt themselves and the planet by letting this virus get out. Now, President Trump is trying to downplay it, and I understand why he would be doing this. He's trying to downplay it and blame it on the media. That the media is blowing it out of proportion. Meanwhile, people like me and Steve Bannon were saying just 48 hours ago that the media is the one. I mean, where have you been when it's only been people like me and Steve Bannon and a few others that have been that Peak Prosperity and a few others who have been out in the front, getting punched in the face saying these things, and now people are starting to say, "Oh yeah, this is real." For instance, one of the guests on Bannon's show tonight was saying, there an estimate now that we need 300 million masks in America, and we only have 30 million. That's ridiculous. I mean, even without doing any napkin math, I can figure we need more than 300 million. We have 330 million people. And then an old estimate, according to one of the people on the show, was that we would need 25 billion masks just in the United States for something like this. Keeping in mind, I believe only 7% of our masks are even manufactured in the United States. And so, this is a very serious thing. Now, he's just come back from India. President Trump has just come back from India. He needs to go straight to Atlanta or have all the CDC bigwigs and other national security people standing right beside him. He needs to have them there in 5 hours at 1800 tonight, Washington time. And he needs to, the CDC has massively screwed up. The CDC is completely untrustworthy. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, I have no faith in them any more than I have in the World Health Organization or in Beijing at this point. The World Health Organization, according to their own website, I just checked it again like an hour ago. Go into their website, go to the part about this virus, and you'll see that we've only tested 426 people so far in the entire United States. 426 people. And so you hear people saying, well, the United States doesn't have many cases. How would we know? The CDC, actually, they had some test kits they said were faulty. Okay, whoever was responsible for that must be fired instantly. You're out. Because now, as you know, when we get into wars, the generals who are good in peacetime are not always great in wartime, right? And this is one of those situations. I'm sorry, I'm looking at something over here. This is one of those situations where whoever has been in charge of these things in the past, like not having our masks available, and letting these medicines start to be manufactured over in China, anybody that we can, for instance, CDC, not having the ability to even test. This is absolutely unforgivable in a wartime sense. This is like NORAD, and let's say, their computers aren't working and can't capture you can't even see Soviet launches of missiles. It's that bad. This is pathetic. I mean, the CDC is dependent upon others like Korea and others doing, with their numbers. And you go down these numbers, country by country, whether it's Korea or Iran, every one of them is unreliable for one reason or another. Chinese numbers are completely unreliable just because they're Chinese numbers. But people keep repeating them. Big news media keep going, China, blah, 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 but we don't trust the numbers. We just repeated the numbers. You just gave them out again. And numbers, for instance, in the United States, we know they're absolutely untrustworthy. The numbers in the United States are no more trustworthy than the numbers in China. Absolutely not any more trustworthy than the numbers in China. Not even close. Actually, possibly far less, because the numbers in the United States, we've only tested 426 people. It's voodoo to say how many people have it. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So this is one thing that I am very good at, is searching through the experts and finding out like let's go back to wars. So this is something I have a demonstrable track record on. Whenever I've said a general needs to be fired here or there, and people go, what are you doing? You can't say that. This guy's, he graduated from West Point, and, he's got all kinds of stuff all over his chest. He knows everything about war. It's like, listen, Rambo, there are some generals who may know a lot of stuff, but they're just not good at execution, or they lie for whatever reason, politically, or they just don't see the thing, what's going on, or they're just not made to be a wartime general. General McChrystal was one of those. And remember, I got out in front and was saying General McChrystal needed to be fired. He eventually was fired, but when I was saying that, inside of his battle space, it really made people go very, very angry. Likewise, at the same time, I was saying General Menard, Daniel Menard of the Canadian Army, needed to be fired. I was saying that at the same time, both in Afghanistan, and both were fired. In fact, General Menard was reduced in rank to colonel for something that I published back then. And so, these are really big things. Am I as good at running a war as those two? Probably not, but they were losing the war. What I am really good at is searching through and going, okay, that commander, he may be really good at something, but he's not good at this. And this guy is losing the war, right? That was McChrystal. That was Menard. That was some others. And I've called them out at times. And you can look online and look up an article in the Telegraph called 2 Big Military Scalps for Michael Yon. That's the Telegraph, the very highly esteemed Telegraph. 2 big military scalps for Michael Yon. Now remember, back at that time, people were saying, you've lost your mind. You've got the PTSD and you've seen too much combat and all that. And I'm like, I don't have PTSD. I got post-traumatic clown disorder, right? I don't like clowns. I don't like them in command positions. And that's what we got at CDC right now. We've got the CDC is the Clown Detection Center or something. I don't know what it is, because if it were NORAD, we would have Soviet missiles landing all over America right now, and the only way we would know would be to walk out and get blown away. This is absolutely ridiculous that we've only done 426 tests, and the CDC is just now saying, well, this could be a big deal, they said about less than, 24 hours ago. Hello, people like me knew that. That's all I've been saying since January. And the CDC is just saying this is absolutely unforgivable. Must be fired. Whoever, that top leadership needs to go. They're incompetent. And President Trump needs to get on their ass. And President Trump needs to stop playing off like this is the media that created this problem. It's not the media that created this problem. It's China. China let it get out of hand. And now it's out of hand. And President Trump and all the king's horses and all the king's men all around the world can't put this back in the box again. It's too late. It's out of control. The United States is not powerful enough to stop it. China created this mess. The only country that can even make a huge effect to stop it is one country. That's the United States. President Trump is the president, obviously, of the United States. He is in the best position of anybody in the world to mitigate the problems. We can't stop it. It's too late. But we can mitigate. We can mitigate casualties. We can mitigate, because if the infection rate goes too out of control and our medical facilities like hospitals and whatnot are overwhelmed, then the case fatality rates will increase. And this is things that infection disease experts see around the world all the time. Once your hospitals and your clinics are overloaded, suddenly things get a lot worse, and it spins out of control. It reaches critical viral mass, and then you've got a more than a pandemic. You've got a really terrible, terrible pandemic. And so that's where we're at. And so President Trump is a wartime president. And we're going to see how well he does, because, there's none of those Democratic candidates that have any chance, that doesn't look like, to beat him at this point. But this virus, as I've been saying for a long time now, there's one thing that can beat President Trump, and that's this virus. And this virus is already out of control. So we are at this point, China let it steal a long march on us. And then now we've let it steal numerous more marches. Now it's inside of our camp. Now we are no longer in a position to fight offense against this disease. We are strictly defensive at this point, and we must get on it, fire all these clowns that have been in the way, that have only tested 426 people so far. Absolutely ridiculous. And it's also absolutely ridiculous that we still have huge numbers of flights coming in from all over the world. It's unbelievable. Now, I understand that the massive economic impact that we can have by cutting this stuff down. But look what's already happening in Italy. Look what's happening in Korea. Look what's happening in China. Look what's happening in Singapore. It's just going. We've reached critical mass. We're there. Now, it's gone vertical, exponential. And so there you go. All right, I'll try to answer a few questions. In fact, we're even talking about recycling masks now, which is something, we've been talking about on my little Facebook here for a while. And but we will, by the way, up this my little Facebook soon enough. Please do hit my Patreon and my PayPal and that sort of thing. New gear is on the way already from the United States. And I'm going to, as we get it all set up, it takes a while. It took Steve Bannon a while to get his set up, and he has the whole thing already, the infrastructure there. But we'll get it set up to where you have multiple platforms like YouTube and Patreon and different platforms. And so that we're not just hitting on Facebook, we'll start hitting on many platforms at once, as I did for a while there in Hong Kong. But we'll do it here with a better, and I'll be able to pull up other screens and that sort of thing, and take call-ins from experts and that sort of thing. And so, Scooby Cadence is asking, can we retaliate with military? Retaliate what? Against a virus? I don't know what you're talking about. If you're talking about against China, no. I mean, it's like it, no. Hey, SB, Corinda, Pamela, and hello, and David. Let's see. Good day, Danielle. Let's see. Hello, Marie. I'm looking if there's any. Hey, Todd. Yep, went live. And confirmed case here in Helsinki, Pamela is saying. Oh, yeah, and one down in Brazil. And hello from Arizona, and Cherie there. Hello, Gladys. Good morning, Weishan, and thank you for the thing on that interesting new phone. Yeah, we'll talk about that on another time. That's quite interesting. And hey, Kendall, thank you on the good. Hey, Bashir, my friend from Afghanistan. I hope you're loving the United States. I hope your wife and your children love it. Hey, Dave. All right, and. Remember, President Trump is going live at 1800 tonight in Washington. I believe in Washington, right? Is that where he's going live from? About the situation, and I'm very interested to see what he's saying. I hope idiots at CNN and whatnot are not going off on sideshows about Russia or something. They should be asking that guy Bernie about Russia, and they should be asking that guy Biden about how the Senate run is going. Need some water there. All right. And hello, my brother Billy. And hey, Mark, Eric, I hope everything's going well there. And Eric, charges got dropped by the police in Hong Kong against Eric Falk tonight. Oh, you're in Dubai. Bashir's in Dubai. Oh, you must be going to or from Afghanistan, I'm going to guess. I hope if you do, everything's good. Speaking of Hong Kong, Eric says, Eric's a good guy to talk with, Eric Falk. He's on the streets all the time. I called him up a few hours ago, actually. We were talking about situation there. He said there was some panic buying of toilet paper and that sort of thing before, and food, but that's not right now. The shelves are well stocked and that sort of thing. And I asked Eric, why does he think that the case numbers for Hong Kong are looking lower than other places? And I would think the Hong Kong numbers would be very high. In fact, the highest, because like Mongkok, where Eric and I have spent a great deal of time together, is the most densely populated area in the world. the Hong Kongers got hit by SARS pretty hard when SARS came out. And so and Hong Kongers are highly educated. So they got some things going against them. One is neighbors with China. That's big time against them. They got a government under Carrie Lam that's clearly in China's pocket. That's two things against them. And three is high population density. These are things going against Hong Kong. In Hong Kong's favor, they're highly educated people, and they've got some of those Japanese traits. And they're not Japanese, of course, they're Hong Kongers. But they've got, you know what I'm saying? They got those kind of social responsibility traits that can help them as a group collectively fight as a hive, And so they've got, for instance, I asked Eric today, how many, what percentage did he see of people wearing masks on the MTR, which is their subway and train system, and it's like their mass transit railway. And he said about 1 out of 30 or not. So that'd be 3% he's guessing. So I asked what about the white people in the bars and stuff, the ones that are out there basically slobbering drunk all the time. And he said about 50-50. Unbelievable. You know what's interesting about a lot of some of the foreigner white people in Hong Kong, though? You get some of the really high caliber, super high caliber guys there. And then you get that normal expat riffraff that you find just slopping around the bars all over the place. And sometimes during the protest there, I would, go into one of those and take a break or whatever. And I would talk with them and I would be like, how's everything going here? And there could be a protest right outside on the street, 18 feet away, and they would just have no idea what it's really about. They would just be like, well, it's anti-something, it's anti-extradition bill or whatever. And they really don't know, even though they're holding signs right outside. And they'll be like, I've been here for 15 years or 20 years. And they pretend like they know what's going on. And they actually know very little. And then you might talk to another foreigner that lives there, and you can tell he or she is super dialed in and paying very close attention to every little thing that they can absorb. But yeah, so a lot of the white folk there in Hong Kong not wearing masks, and quite interesting. Hey, Barbara and Bruce Deichman and Marcos from Leon, Mexico. Quick question from Marcos Rodriguez. Let's see, what is the question? Quick question. What's the best answer to those who say seasonal influenza kills more people every year than the China virus will ever do? So no need to... Okay, they don't know what they're talking about. You may not be able to persuade them because they might not have the math and some other skills. But I certainly would... at the bare minimum, don't take their advice because they don't know what they're talking about. Those are they're lacking education on such a fundamental level that it can be hard to reach them without some significant amount of time investment, which can be worth it, because if you can get them to understand, which is important, then they might start taking precautions. Because remember, it's not all about us protecting ourselves, but the herd immunity comes from also us protecting others by wearing masks, by wearing gloves, by washing our hands 20 seconds with soap and water, not all that chemical crap. 20 seconds between your fingers, back of your hands. Teach the kids, soap and water. Get your wrist, wash it really good. I do it all the time. I'm getting to the point where I'm dreaming about washing my hands, and I don't even need to because I don't go out much. And so because I'm self-quarantining most of the time, although I did go to the store today and pick up some more rice. Probably don't need it, but I got another... Get jasmine, by the way. This is Thailand, man. If you're going to get rice, get jasmine rice. So I got, what did I get today? I got another like 23 pounds. Not just this one, but I got another one and a couple of small ones too. But, rice. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of Asians that don't even know how to cook rice. That's just weird. When you can find Thai people that don't know how to cook rice, that's just straight up strange. That's like, a Southern woman or man or whatever that doesn't know anything about grits. Or what a buttermilk biscuit tastes like. That's just absolutely strange. One of the reasons that population in some parts of Asia can be so high is that rice creates so many calories per unit area of land, like per acre, it creates a lot of calories, right? And in some places you can have 2 or 3 crops per year on the same plot, right? So in places like by the Yellow River, different places that have nice water and soil, the rice crops can is one of the reasons why some parts of Asia have such huge populations, is because it can create so much energy per unit land and per unit time. But yeah, Marcos, there's a lot of Americans, a lot of Thais, a lot of others who just don't get the flu thing. Hello from Texas. Thank you, Flack Pappy. That's kind of a cool name. Flack Pappy, are you like shooting down airplanes? Hey, let's see. Good morning, Mark. And let's see, Phil Toki is saying, or Tochi, my corporate trip to Thailand was canceled. That's smart. Once Korea reported, thanks for the advice last week. You're welcome. If I told you not to fly, I would highly advise that at this point. In fact, I almost went to Hong Kong yesterday, and I decided no joy. And actually, the more I see more information come in today, I would say at this point, 90% chance that the Olympics will be canceled. And I think I'm being conservative. I like to be conservative, and I'm throwing 90%. I think that if you're planning on going to the Olympics, plan on doing something else. Read one of my books, but plan on doing something else. There's a lot of things that you can do that don't include going out to parties and young people stay out of the bars right now, or whatever it is that you like to do in big groups of people. Learn how to read my books or read somebody's books. Read books on infectious diseases. This is a good time to get some education while we're in the middle of it, and remember everything that you're seeing, and remember this because in the future, most of us will survive, and we can teach the next generation when the next one comes. And because this is not the first, and it will not be the last, but we're about to get smashed in the face by it. Bellis Chuck says, just stop to say thank you for everything from Hong Kong to Wuhan Virus. You're welcome, Bellis Chuck. You're a warrior. Thank you, sir. And Eddie Villanova. I was reading a good book tonight when I was taking a break. This guy, he's a former SEAL. Gosh, what's his name? He's really tough, man. He's always doing these ultra marathons and stuff. What's his name? Oh, it doesn't matter. But anyway, he's totally, he's an inspiration. Simona Delash. Hey, Mike, good evening from Vienna. How's it going in Vienna? It's been a long time since I was there. And Simona and Peter, I hope everything is good. Oh, wow. I hope it's good over there. I hope you guys are good. I saw you guys in Hong Kong. I hope you guys are doing great. And it's been a long time since I've been in Vienna. Not far from Vienna, maybe an hour or two when you can get up into the mountains and into the, that was the best water I ever had in my life up there in the Alps. I was like, man, that water's so good. I wish I could remember where it was. All right. Aloha, Don Sakuda, Lisa, Dente, hello, Robert Jennings in Kaufman, Texas. Kaufman. And I know you say Kaufman, right? And so, hey, David, up in Utah. You didn't say that, but you're probably in Utah, I guess. Hey, Georgine Madigan Stoner. Hello from New Jersey. Finally caught a live broadcast. Hello, Ji Soon-ri. Are you in Korea? That sounds like a Korean name. I hope everything's good in there. Hello, Eric. Hello from a retired OH-58D Kiowa Warrior pilot from Cincinnati. Man, I love y'all. Man, I could have written a whole book about Kiowa pilots. Y'all are unbelievable, man. A lot of people don't get it. They just don't get it. It's funny. They'll be like, oh, the helicopters are up there safe. I'm like, I don't think you see the same helicopters that I've seen. Kiowa Warrior helicopter pilots, they're just like lawnmowers with little M4 shooting out the door and stuff. Y'all saved a lot of lives and took a lot of lives. Good morning from Orange County, California. David, yep, in Utah. And Sakuda Dawn, hope to see you in Hawaii sometimes. Hey, Chris. Brian Smith in Long Island. Yeah, it's so cool that we can have a connection all over the world like this. Don Sakuda, they are too polite sometimes, also keep themselves in. You must be talking about Japanese. I love Japanese. Japanese are quite similar to Southern Americans in a lot of ways. it's funny because a lot of things you'll see about them, and when I've pointed it out to Southerners and to Japanese, they start to actually see it. They're actually, because you might think, oh, we're way, 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 way different. And you're like, actually, we got a lot of similarities. It's just, but you have to slow down a bit and think about your own culture, and then look at some of the similarities are quite interesting. You're talking about Don saying they don't like gossip. You mean Japanese? Yeah, and some Southern cultures will gossip like crazy, and then there's others that really just reject it because there's more than one Southern culture, as you might know, but you're in Hawaii, so I don't know if you would know that or not. Scooby is saying, Michael, is this virus still a threat? The threat has just begun. Yes. This is like 1938, right? Yeah, the threat has just begun. Hello, Jay Lamb. You are awesome. I hope everything's going good out there. Stay away from Apple. Man, talking about Apple some other time. Hey, Kim Shaw, DeBouveau, and Kathleen in Utah, and Jay. Yeah, is this virus still a threat? Absolutely. Hey, Dean, my friend Dean, and Tammy. Let's see. Biden has had brain surgery. Once you crack, I didn't know he had brain surgery. Actually, I feel kind of bad for the guy. He's getting up there in age, and he's clearly got some issues. So I think it's actually very bad form to make any jokes about it. Just like, actually, it's America though. So if he wants to run for president, he can run, and then just we'll just not vote for him, and hopefully his family will take care of him. I was thinking about Buzz Aldrin. I love to follow his Twitter, but I haven't gotten any of his tweets lately. And I was thinking about Buzz. His family was trying to take control of some of his personal life because of issues. And I thought, Buzz, I love following him, man. That guy was something else, or is still something else. He was the second man who stepped on the moon on Apollo 11, right after Neil Armstrong. And just imagine him being, talking with people like, that old man told me he walked on the moon. He's crazy, He's like, actually, that's Buzz Aldrin. He did walk on the moon, and he likes to brag about walking on the moon too. He's like the only Apollo astronaut that will just be like bragging about it all the time. and as you know, most, especially like from that sort of culture and like Southern culture, we generally don't like people that brag. But if you walked on the moon and you brag about it all the time, it's okay. It's pretty cool. We'll overlook that one. I think, Roxanne says, I think the stress of running for president is rapidly affecting Biden. Yeah, if we just don't vote for him, that'll just take care of that. And hopefully his family will take care of him. Hey, should the Olympic game be canceled in Japan this summer in July? I think 90% chance. I think the Olympics will be canceled. I think it's pretty unrealistic to plan on the Olympics going forward at this point. David over there in Yorkshire, and Eric Leach saying, I'm thinking the POTUS is going to address the war fitting tonight. POTUS is President of the United States. It's just short. Some people call it that. And it's going to be 1800 EST, and right now is so that's about 5 hours from now or so, 4 hours and 41 minutes. If I just did my math right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and knock off soon unless I see any. Kimmy Chan said, a China bee farmer killed himself after all his bees died from all the chemicals the government sprayed. Man. That's the thing. In China, and I have a friend who married a Chinese woman, like real Chinese. And they had some financial problems, and she got really upset, like massive. That can lead to divorce in a lot of cultures. And I said, put a cultural filter on this, because remember, if Americans lose all their money, we've got a very serious cushion net. You're not going to starve to death. In China and many other cultures, if you run out of money, your ass is dead. You will starve to death. If you don't have a family network, or if your whole village goes bad or whatever, you are really in trouble. It is no joke, very serious. And so I said, kind of relax on that because, she's getting stressed out. I mean, in her mind, she's seeing a different movie than you're seeing, as Scott Adams would say. I mean, for her, that's like catastrophic. For us, it's catastrophic, but it's not like life and death. We're going to be bones and ribs catastrophic. So, yeah. Cecilia Thompson, jobs here in BC on hold because we can't get the steel from China. I take it you're talking British Columbia. Hey, Jane Mulligan Bookless. I hope everything's good with you and the Tedster. Talon, I call him Talon because his grip is so strong. Ted was a friend of mine from Special Forces, super climber. I called him Spider-Man because he was like 8-man strong, and we used to have grip contest, and I could never beat him. But he could never beat me either. He could beat me climbing, but he couldn't beat me on the grip contest. All right, James. Just masks aren't going to solve the problem. No, they're not. The mask and some other things are just can just mitigate spread and reduce, the R naught number, hopefully, which is the transmissibility, right? Hey, Justin Prosser and Jerry Brescianon from Lutz. All American news outlets had pretty extensive coverage of the virus on their broadcast last night. Maybe they're finally taking this serious. Yeah, that's good. Brian is asking, are the N100 masks good? Yes, but they're harder to breathe out of. Better to get the N95. That's what the medical people recommend, because after you wear it for a while, you're not going to want to wear the N95. Will start stressing you out. Like I've got one of those here, and it's after a while, it's like, you want to take it off because after, for the first part, like, it's good. And then after a while, you're like, man, this thing, I have to struggle to breathe through it. I have to actually, it's not on autopilot where you put the N95 and it's got just enough and it's quite easy to breathe through. But it will, remember, it can't keep the viruses out themselves, but it can keep the particles out. Remember, these viruses don't live at the almost like atomic level. They're not living at the DNA level floating around. They're on droplets of spittle or mucus or something like that. They're on bodily fluids, as an example. They're not. So if you can keep those out, or if you're wearing a mask and you sneeze and you can contain those, then you didn't just inoculate everybody around you. Rod Rosen, let's see. Chris Willis, what's going on in the Philippines? I haven't found any reports of infections. I was looking at Philippines yesterday. Some countries aren't reporting much, like the United States, but the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, that's like our basically Pentagon for diseases, is just completely showing yet again that they're completely incompetent, which is interesting because when you meet people from CDC or you see them talk on television, you're like, man, these guys and these women are especially smart. And they are. Like people that work for our State Department tend to be super smart. I mean, you get around them and you're like, wow, these people are like exceptional. But then as a group, they get their IQ somehow lowers. Like, you know what I mean? They're like, if you were to add up all their IQs and just do an average, it would be quite high. But then when you get them together on groupthink, they become like less than average. They become like actually kind of dullards. And you get the same with the State Department. Who wrote in a book about 10 or 15 years ago? He wrote something about something like the State Department takes very above average people and makes a below average outcome or something like that, whereas the military takes average or below average people and turns out like super stuff. Well, sometimes, but you know what I'm saying, which is true. Like I don't know what it is. I mean, we could all have our theories on that. Carrie Hewitt is saying, any good example of a country able to precisely and on time? I can only think of Taiwan and North Korea. If I understand what you're saying, I don't know about North Korea. There's nothing out of North Korea I would trust at all. Taiwan is obviously a very advanced country, and they're a very highly educated people, generally speaking, and socially responsible at individual and group level. So, I mean, Taiwan is one of those countries that could have the ability to make the best of the situation, which is a bad situation. They're right next to China, and they've had a lot of, clearly they're infected at this point. All right. Brian Dodd saying people keep saying the mortality rate is only 2%, so the Spanish flu's mortality was okay. It's good to talk about the Spanish flu. We're like fighting the last war, you know what I'm saying, in a sense. But there's also there's a limit to how far we can go with that comparison. For instance, our population density is much higher now than it was then, much higher, and the world population's higher, and we're much more connected. We've got all these jets shooting all over the place right now. Right now, there's thousands of aircraft in the air and thousands of trains and millions of vehicles traveling millions of miles, per minute. You know what I mean? So this thing is just going everywhere right now as we speak. And so, it's containment is not an option. That's out the door. This horse is way out of the map. And also keep in mind with the Spanish flu, the first wave, which is we're on like the front end of the first wave of this one. It was the second wave that was the worst on Spanish flu, and then the third wave was deadly as well. So Mark is saying some generals are perfume princes. Yes, and in a peacetime situation, bureaucracies can select for a different type of person than wartime situations will, which is, there's some wartime generals that are just kind of unfit for, normal duty. You know what I mean? They're like caged animals. You know what I mean? We need them for the war. And then, it's like, maybe it's time to get a different job. You know what I mean? So, but likewise, when we get into these big bad situations, those people that can handle the day-to-day bureaucracy often can't handle it because they're not suited for that. It's nothing bad about them. They'd be fine, excellent people and super squared away and smart and ethically sound and everything else. It's just not their thing. We've all got our things that we're good at, and most of the things in the world, all of us are not good at. We're lucky if we're good at one or two things in our life. And so if we work hard, we'll all be good at least one thing. But we're not, but the people who are in CDC at this point, they've let this bad boy get out of the bag, and we need to do some changes there. Jerry saying a local Tampa news anchor recently posted that the Red Sox prospect has been quarantined in his hotel due to virus concerns. Also, I was told that a friend of mine on the on the Thai police force, one of his friends has been quarantined today. And so, study released from the National Laboratory at Los Alamos indicates the virus is highly contagious and more infectious. All right. Let me get back to work here. There's a lot of comments. I'd like to shoot down to the bottom. Hey, Sean, the Spanish flu primarily killed young, healthy adults with strong immune systems, leaving elderly and children generally fine. They became sick, but few died. It's interesting because the Spanish flu, which actually nobody really knows where it came from. We know that there was a cluster clearly in Kansas that got to our military, and then our military took it over to France. And then anyway, it did all kinds of things. Nobody really quite knows where it came from, but it seems to have killed mostly people that were born, of course, after 1889, right? So people that were born after 1889, which was that like 30 or so undergroup, were the ones that were highly affected by the Spanish flu, which was, of 1918, which it didn't really start in 1918 and it didn't really end in 1918. It's still out there. But I mean, but most of the people that died were born in 1889 or later, which is interesting. The scientists are still trying to crack that nut. And who knows, maybe one day they'll know the answer. I know one thing. We need to support, at this point, our medical doctors and nurses and other associated support elements, and our researchers, our infectious disease scientists and whatnot. We need to support them as if this is a war, and we need to support them as if this is a war, which it is. And so all the moral and support that we can give, and also physical support if they happen to be, a nurse or a doctor lives in your neighborhood, like, if this thing crashes into your country, whatever country that is, and, suddenly they're working, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they need somebody to feed their dog or something like that, help them out, you know what I mean? Water their yard or whatever, like help them take care of themselves, because, in a wartime situation, you need to have your soldiers pointed front. And, in China now, it's believed that up to 10,000, or this number has probably changed in the last day or two, of the nurses and doctors are infected, which takes them off the front line, right? And some are dying. There's quite a few that have already died. I saw a lot of their photos yesterday. I should have put them up. And they're just dead. So, just like soldiers, and remember, unlike soldiers, many soldiers we can create quite quickly, right? Like we can take a person off the street and give him a really good amount of training in like 6 months, and you got a soldier, right? And a lot of people can fit into that mold. With even 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months of training, you can have somebody off the streets into a reasonable level of combat readiness if they were already fit to begin with, that sort of thing. But we can't do that with our medical people. We can't create a doctor from clay in 6 months or 6 years. It takes a long time to create it. In the United States, where nurses are like doctors in other countries, we can't just snap our fingers and make a nurse in 2 or 3 years. You know what I mean? It's like, and they're always short anyway. We never have enough nurses anyway. So, they're going to be on the front line. I see some people saying we should be sending them over to China. And so I'm like, hold on. No, sirree. We do not want to send our medical people over to China or anywhere else right now. This is about to hit the United States or wherever you're at, Philippines or Germany or Italy, Iran. Everybody needs to start figuring out how we're going to work it here. And one of the things that we can all do is prepare right now. You see, I got rice and all kinds of dried stuff and canned foods and water supply and everything else, so that we don't have to go out to the store and stress the logistics system. You're not hoarding if you do it in advance. If you do it in advance, it's called stockpiling. It's called common sense. It's called being smart and prepared, right? If you do it at the last minute, all the shelves are empty, and then you're tempted to buy everything you can get. That's called hoarding. And people get upset with hoarding, but you know who we should really be upset with is ourselves, because we always know that's going to happen. I grew up in Florida. Hoarding is normal every time there's a hurricane. Then I've been to all these other places where there's disasters. People go empty out the shelves. But if you're prepared to begin with, you didn't even need to do that. Like, they could make an announcement tomorrow in Thailand, like, buy everything you got and all the shelves will be empty. And I'll be like, whatever, I got enough. You know what I mean? It's like I can just watch it on TV. I'll probably go out and take a few photos and tell you what's going on, that sort of thing, and talk with some people and send information around that can help us, because information is our primary weapon at this point, is information, and educating each other on little things like washing hands. And like they're talking about now, sanitizing masks. How can we sanitize masks? I don't know. My guess, especially if you're in a place with a lot of sunlight, is to set it out in the sun. Ultraviolet light is a killer on microbes. All right. Mark says the world's about to get a lot less global. When people keep asking me, what do I mean by China is dead now? Well, the China we know is clearly dead at this point. The economy has ground to a halt. Even before this, we had American and other companies saying, hey, it's time to punch out of China because the good days are coming to an end. We got the tariff issues going on and so many other things going on. Like, China has overplayed its hand, trying to steal from everybody all the time, and just trying to bully everybody and mistreating so many people. And finally, the gig is up. And so even if the virus just stopped tomorrow, which it won't, but even if it did do that, it's still going to take a long time to restart their economy and restart the supply chain and these other things. And meanwhile, the tariff fight, which is really a fight to destroy CCP. Remember, I've been saying this for about 2 years. You see all these headlines about the tariff war and the trade war between the United States and China. We're not in a trade war. I've been saying this for about 2 years now? We are in a war to destroy the Chinese Communist Party. Why do you think I was in Hong Kong? We are in a war to destroy the Chinese Communist Party. The trade aspect is just one way of getting there. And now this virus just came from China. They did it to themselves. They basically nuked themselves with viruses. They've done Chernobyl on themselves. And so whatever's going to happen with that, not looking good for China. All right. and I would get all the masks that you can get right now, and stock up. And like Tiffany's saying, eat really well, no junk food, healthy food, get you some grits, get honey, get milk. It's funny how they put, have you ever noticed how they put, what are those expiration dates, eat by dates or whatever, sell by dates on honey? That's just ridiculous. Honey never goes bad. They put these sell by and eat by dates on so much food. I hate throwing away food. It's like if I throw away a crumb of food, I'm like, it's like something shocks my system. Maybe it comes from my grandparents, because they were, back in the hard times. Maybe some of that's genetic memory. I don't know. Did you know, I touched my face. Did you know that the eggs that make you as a human were actually in your grandmother's body? Did you know that? I mean, because the women are born with a certain number of eggs, right? And they're actually made while they're still gestating themselves. So when your mother, the egg that your mother made you with was made in her body when she was still inside of her mother. Interesting, huh? Which, it makes me wonder, what diet and whatnot your grandmother had, and what direct effect does that have, like super direct effect can that have on your genes, given that the egg that made you was literally in your grandmother's body. Really interesting how far, that goes back when you think about it. So like if you're like 70 years old and then you're, you're like, just think about that for a minute. It's like, the egg that made you could have been, 120 years old or something by now. It was from a completely different genetic time. We didn't have all these processed foods and whatnot. The foods that have the labels on them, the food you shouldn't eat, all the food with labels is the food you shouldn't eat. If it's got like a nutrition label, it's like, like bananas don't come with nutrition labels. Anyway, it'd be interesting after this is all done would be to, get a geneticist and some other types on podcast and ask them about this, for instance, the eggs that make us were in our grandmother's bodies, and to talk about things like that I find incredibly interesting. All right. Alan says, all right, that's deep. Talk about chicken and egg riddle. Yeah, which came first, the chicken or egg? You're like, grandmother. I'll touch my face again. Grandmother came first. So we were actually, we were like directly inside of our grandmother's body. That's pretty wild, isn't it? All right. And Matt Matson is saying, I think people need information on survival, decom procedures, resource conservation and planning, OPSEC, PPE, materials. There's a lot of good videos. A lot of preppers that people have made fun of for so long. I'm a prepper. A lot of people make fun of preppers, and I'm like, I don't make fun of them. I go and look at their videos on YouTube, like, several times a week to get more information, ideas, because remember, this stuff isn't all set in stone. Like the things that you can do to prepare yourself change over time. For instance, let's say Tevex suits. Tevex suits didn't exist, way back when. So, there are certain things now that you have to keep up on it. And so anyway, I'm looking to see, Marcus is saying, that is amazing stuff, Michael, and a perfect example of why so many of us follow you. As I've said before, your podcasts are truly encyclopedic. Are you talking about the egg being inside your mother's body, your grandmother's body? That's pretty interesting, isn't it? It is really something to think about. Like your grandmother's nutrition could directly, have a pretty really direct effect. I'm not a geneticist, so I wouldn't know where to go with that other than to suspect there could be some kind of very direct effect there. All right, let me go. I would like to again thank everybody for supporting my work. And hitting my Patreon is really helpful. And that's the sort of thing that I'm going to use when this is all over. Well, I'm using it now. That's why I can study 24 hours a day and not have to, work and not have to be in the army or some agency or something. And to, and I can, and sift through information and contact people and that sort of thing and whittle it down and provide it to you. And so I need your help. Can't get it unless you ask it. I really appreciate y'all hitting my Patreon, PayPal, Venmo, all those other things, Zelle, and you can see it. There's the link on my on the top of my Facebook. And you're welcome, Susan. And I'm going to go ahead and shut it off. Y'all have a good night. And 1800. Remember, President Trump's going to be on talking about, and that's only about 4 hours and 20 minutes from now, right? So I'll be on there watching that. Wait a minute. I want to see what Vicky says. Vicky McSwain. Yes, a medicine my grandmother took when she was pregnant gave my mom cancer. They are studying great-granddaughters now. Oh, really? Robert Bowling. Get some sleep, you say. I don't know. Maybe I won't sleep because I'm drinking coffee. And maybe I'll just stay up and watch the president and study because there's some stuff I need to read. Angie's saying, Angie McRae Center, hey, Michael, hello from Montana, Big Sky. You do good work. Thank you, and I appreciate it. Can you recommend a mask for coronavirus? Yes, I can. I would recommend, well, I'm not going to show it to you because it's not readily available. Get an N95 mask, and you need about one for every about 4 hours to do it right. Don't get this kind, but they look something like this, right? And you need a kind with two straps. Right? Two straps. Don't get one strap, and don't get the ones that just go over your ears because they hurt, and you'll take it off. Because you'll be like, at first you'll be like, no, that doesn't hurt. And trust me, like 30 minutes later, you'll be like, you'll be like, this thing's bothering my ears, And next thing you know, you'll be like, I'll just take one ear off, It's not doing you any good. And so you need to get one that has this metal strip, and this is metal. It looks plastic. And get one that's comfortable. This one's not comfortable. I think it's probably a fake. I got it in Thailand, but it's not comfortable. But I'm actually wearing a respirator, these are actually called respirators, the N95s. But I got a different kind, and I'll show it to you later. I was wearing it today, but I'll show you on a different night, and because it's not right here. And but what you do is if you put this kind on, make sure it's got the two straps. One strap goes over your ear, one strap goes under your ear, and then put this on. And don't do it with your one hand. Do it with both. Because if you do it with one, it usually doesn't seal, right? So if you do it like this, it won't seal very well. So do it like this, so that it seals, okay? And then once it's on, don't touch it. Leave it alone. Don't mess with it. Just leave it alone. Don't be touching it. And then when you're finally finished, unless you got a lot of mask, I suggest not throwing it away at this point, because I suspect that we're going to be able to sanitize these by setting them in the sun. And get them some good sunlight, because we're going to be short of masks. We're going to be short. And, I think that, but let's see, maybe just throw them in a garbage bag or throw them out in the sun for a while. And then hopefully the scientists will get back to us soon enough and tell us if the sunshine will do it. But I'm going to make a wild guess and say 95% chance if you set that bad boy in the sun like this and then set it in the sun like that for another 20 minutes or so, I'll bet you that bad boy is going to be quite sanitized, depending on where you live. I mean, if you live way up in North Finland and the sun's, never very high, that might be one thing. But if you live like down in South Florida where the sun like melts magnifying glasses, it causes them to explode practically. You get a lot of UV down there. Or if you live way up in Denver, a mile high up in the in the mountains, you're going to get a lot of UV, right? So I don't know. We need to have scientists weigh in on that. And we need to not do one of these 2-year freaking studies. Get out there and do some quick studies and tell us quickly, what do you think? We understand this is wartime. We don't need to wait 2 years for a study. We need to, What about a microwave? Alan is saying, my guess is no. That's my guess. My guess is absolutely no. It's just my guess. Plus, it's got metal in that thing, right. I would not put it in a microwave. I would put it in the sun, maybe in one of those tanning booths or something. Maybe ask if you know some doctors or nurses, or maybe go online and look at the UV sanitizers that they use to, the UV lights. But here, like the sunshine here is like similar to Florida. I just take it out and put it in the sun, which I've done to my masks already. Because I'm going on, basically, redneck information here. I think I know from just growing up and having the sort of grandparents that I had, and then being in special forces, that the sun magically freaking cleans practically everything. That and urine, believe it or not. You can clean a lot with urine, including your wounds, if it's fresh. But anyway, but yeah, did you know urine is actually quite very sanitary. It's very, very clean. Urine is quite clean. Use your own though if you ever need it. Like if I've cut myself before and I needed it. So like when I'm way out in freaking jungles and stuff like that, I'll use it in a heartbeat. And you should not hesitate, and don't get all grossed out about it. Don't be a bunch of little pansies. Get out there and like, hey man, this is the way it goes. Yeah, one of those UV lamps, Rodriguez is saying, I would say yes. That's my guess, but I would want to know. Get up some of those students that are like 23 years old at MIT or Caltech or something and say, hey man, can y'all go out and test this? You got a microbiology lab, right? You got all these stuff. Why don't y'all go out and test it? You could have some 23-year-old student can test this in 1 week. We don't need to wait for the CDC. They can't even make a test kit. CDC is worthless at this point until we get somebody in charge. But I think if we, just get some, those young, biology students up there that, and they've got access to, all kinds of stuff. Actually, I should just like call up MIT. I should call up some, Johns Hopkins or something, and like get the microbiology lab and say, what do you think about this? And he might, you might get some woman on there and she's like, well, actually, I just tested that last week and it works, but I'm not going to publish it. You never know. You get that sort of stuff. All right. And Leah Broadnex is saying, how do you think the CCP fall will look? Insurgencies countrywide, coup d'etat? Don't know. I do know that they're in serious trouble. Even if they maintain power, they are diminished. The China that we knew in December no longer exists. They're still quite powerful. They still got their legs, but as the old CCP, they're dead. The factories and whatnot, a lot of the manufacturing, people are not going to invest like they were before. There is a lot of economic fallout that is going to happen from this, and nobody can predict it all. Even the biggest experts on, economic experts are not going to be able to predict it all. If they could, the markets wouldn't be doing this crazy stuff right now. The market's going up when the virus was clearly, replicating 1 trillion per minute or whatever. But as the economy collapses and we don't know, but what we do know is that conditions are being set for very bad times in China. What if they can't plant much of their crops here that are coming up, this planting season coming up? That could have obviously severe effects. Would dust mask even worth getting N95s aren't available? Colin Smith said, oh yeah, absolutely. Because remember, a lot of what we're trying to stop is also just if, somebody's talking and, spit flies out, and especially when I got this bright light on, I can see one fly out every once in a while, and that's the kind of thing that can go 4 feet or something, but your mask can stop that. And if you're wearing eye pro, it can stop it from getting your eyes. Obviously, eyes are big, like open doors into your body, and your nose and your mouth, of course. So that's why, where another thing that masks are good for, as are gloves. That's why I got gloves. I got a huge amount of gloves. I was wearing some today when I had to go out and I got some more rice today. I was like, you know what? Still not enough people are taking it seriously, and I know not enough people are prepared, so I'm going to get some even more dry stuff. So I got, like I said, more than 20 more pounds of rice today. And so, just be prepared. And but anything that you can keep from getting this in your eyes or in your mouth or nose can certainly be a help. Vicky's saying, I can't remember the study, but I'll look it up. The thing about that's a subject for another time, about our eggs having been in our grandmother's bodies. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? Alan is saying, what do you think? I don't know what you're talking about specifically about. Don is talking about, it's called an autoclave. I think autoclave is a little different, right? That's for heat, right? I'm not sure about that. And then there's the ones that do just UV, right? Like the barbers will use to clean the comb or whatever. Brian is saying, I agree about CDC. I don't trust CDC at all. They have completely lost my trust. One of those UV lamps, Marcus is saying, I think that might work, but I would like to hear some scientists weigh in. All right, I got to go, and I am going to get to work. And love the egg story. Lois is saying it is a really interesting story. So let's watch together at 1800 tonight. 1800 for you guys. If you're in America, it's for me in Thailand, it'll be 6 a.m. So it's about 4 hours and 9 minutes from now. President Trump should be live, and I want to hear him out in front of the CDC. And I'm not going to give Trump any breaks on this. He's a wartime president at this point. I've really liked a lot of the things he's done with China. But if he's trying to play off like this virus is just nothing, and he's, can fire the virus or whatever, then, well, I'm not going to vote for Bernie no matter what. But at the same time, President Trump needs to be held accountable. We're Americans. A lot of us are, and we've got First Amendment, and we've got the right to say things and be heard. We don't have the right to be heard, but we have the right to say things. Okay, Adam is saying, I keep hearing people say the virus will slow down, if not go away, when the weather heats up. Is this true? Well, no, it's not going to go away. But the weather, it can certainly reduce the transmission for a while. But it's not just going to vanish. I mean, it's with us. At this point, it's with us. All right, let's go ahead and shut off. Hey, Tommy and Wiada Cutler. Thank y'all again for supporting my work on Patreon, PayPal, Venmo, all those ways. Mike out.